Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie. This is episode number 751 for January 20th, 2019. And once again, I'm on the road in Victoria, British Columbia for the second of our two episodes this week from the 14th annual Victoria Whisky Festival at the Hotel Grand Pacific. Coming up in a few minutes, how's it feel to be the Bonnie and Clyde of the British Columbia whiskey business?
Exhilarating.
Well, we actually received a letter from, speaking of Bonnie and Clyde, from the Attorney General while we were in Chicago. We're sitting in Al Capone's booth at the Green Mile.
A year ago this week, British Columbia's whiskey lovers recoiled in horror after provincial liquor inspectors raided the 4 Scotch Malt Whisky Society partner bars in BC, including Allura and Eric Fergie's Fetz Whiskey Kitchen in Vancouver. Their alleged crime? Getting the Society's whiskeys from private liquor stores in the province instead of the government's own liquor distribution system. The thing is, the private stores source all of their whiskeys through the provincial system, but a regulation bans bars and restaurants from using the private stores. So, if the province's stores don't stock a specific whiskey, it's not legally available to restaurant and bar owners like the Fergies, who still have $40,000 worth of SMWS whiskeys locked away after they were seized by the liquor inspectors a year ago. We'll talk with Eric and Allura Fergie on WhiskyCast in depth, and we'll have more highlights from this week's Victoria Whisky Festival, too. That's coming up along with the calendar of events, your voice, and of course, the What I'm Tasting This Week department, all on this episode of WhiskyCast from Victoria, British Columbia.
WhiskyCast, brought to you by Redbreast, the definitive single pot still Irish whiskey. Those in the know Redbreast.
From far beyond the wall comes a whiskey for those who face the oncoming storm and never stop walking. Winter is here. White Walker by Johnny Walker.
White Walker by Johnny Walker. Blended Scotch whiskey, 41.7% alcohol by volume. Imported by Diageo North America, Norwalk, Connecticut. Please drink responsibly.
Let's get started with the news. It's brought to you by Highland Park. We've been updating the progress of several distillery projects in recent weeks here on WhiskyCast, and the new Lag distillery on the Isle of Arran may well be one of the next ones to fire up its stills. Isle of Arran distillers David Ferguson says major construction at the site along Arran's southern coast is pretty much complete right now.
It's all wind and watertight now. All the washbacks are in place, the stills are in place. So we're just waiting for James McTaggart, our distillery manager, to work with the team to commission it in February, and then we should hopefully start production at some point in February or March.
Lag's Visitor Center is still being completed, and the distillery is expected to open for tours by the middle of May, well in time for the island's Malt and Music Festival at the end of June. Meanwhile, it's been a little more than a year now since Billy Walker, Graham Stevenson, and Tricia Savage took over the Glenallachie distillery in Speyside back in October of 2017. There's been some construction work going on at the distillery, mostly to add warehousing capacity on site, but also to open up Glenallachie to the public for the first time. Glenallachie's Alistair Stevenson presented the Glenallachie range for the first time in Canada here in Victoria this weekend and says work is underway right now on a new visitors center and gift shop.
That's definitely in our plans. We've got such an amazing distillery, stunning location, and we'd like to open our doors for people to come and appreciate and share the experience. Yeah.
When do you expect that to open?
I would hope by the end of April, I think, is realistic. Yeah.
Just in time for the Spirit of Speyside Festival.
I think that's a necessity. We'd love to be open for the festival.
The next releases from Glenallachie are expected this summer, when a new range of cask finishes will make their debut. Other new releases to mention, Gordon and MacPhail is releasing its oldest ever bottling of Glen Grant as part of the private collection range. It was distilled in June of 1948 and bottled last October at 70 years old and at 48.6% ABV. Only 210 decanters will be available worldwide. The price, £17,500 each. That's around $22,535 U.S. Last fall, Glen Murray released a new Cabernet Sauvignon cask finish from the Speyside Distillery in Europe. It's now being released in the U.S. It was originally matured in bourbon barrels, but spent the final few months in Cabernet Sauvignon wine casks. It'll sell in the U.S. for around $29.99 a bottle. Also in Speyside, the Macallan is releasing its first new whiskey of 2019. Concept number 1 is a global travel retail exclusive. The whiskey was first matured in sherry-seasoned casks, then finished off in ex-bourbon barrels. It'll sell for around $125 a bottle. Old Forester has been making its reputation in the bourbon world for about 150 years or so, but is now about to release its first rye whiskey. Old Forester Rye debuts February 1st and is based on the recipe for the historic Normandy rye brand from the Brown-Forman archives. The company acquired that brand back in 1940, and the mash bill is 65% rye, 20% malted barley, and 15% corn. It's being bottled at 50% ABV and will sell for around $23 a bottle in the U.S. That's right in line with the pricing for Old Forester's 100 proof bourbon. I received a sample just before leaving for Victoria this week. I'll have tasting notes for it soon at whiskeycast.com. Seattle's Westland Distillery is kicking off its 5th annual Peat Week this week with a series of tastings, a cocktail competition, and, of course, the annual Peat Week whiskey. Master distiller Matt Hoffman was here in Victoria to pregame for Peat Week.
This year's Peat Week is a really fun expression. We've managed to gather together a number of different types of casks, so it's really representative of a lot of the peated spirit that we have produced. So varying ages, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old spirit. It's got a really nice, more iodine characteristic than we've done in the past, but it also has this beautiful kind of peat fruit characteristic. So definitely different from the past 2 years' Peat Week blends. Last year's was much more nutty and leathery. This one is much more tropical fruit, but also closer to Isla in style.
Is it including the Washington State peat that you guys have been getting yet?
No, not yet. We're very excited about that. When that is ready, you will definitely hear about it. We still think that that's, let's call it 18 months away. At this point, 18 to 24 months. But time will tell. We're really excited about it. But it's very, very different from the Scottish peats. That's exactly what we're hoping for.
So we're looking for Peat Week 2021 for that one.
Yeah, why don't we pencil that in there, and we'll see when we get closer to the date, yeah.
Westland's 2019 Peat Week release will be available at the distillery in Seattle and in select markets around the U.S., with a recommended retail price of $99.99 a bottle. I'll have tasting notes for it soon at whiskeycast.com. Last July, we heard about the Great Isla Swim Expedition from Johnny Mundell back in episode 711. He was one of 3 swimmers who made a week-long swim around the Isle of Isla back in 2017. They collected whiskeys along the way from each of the island's distilleries to be blended into the Great Isla Swim Whiskey. Single Cask Nation is putting the final 57 bottles of the Great Isla Swim Whiskey on sale online starting Monday, January 21st at noon Eastern Time. The price, $500 a bottle, with a limit of 1 bottle per person. All proceeds are being donated to the Royal National Lifeboat Institution's Isla Lifeboat Station. I had the chance to taste it last summer, and my tasting notes are available at the WhiskyCast website. That's also where you can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long. The news is brought to you by Highland Park, the Orkney single malt with Viking soul. I've mentioned Highland Park's single cask bottlings that are available in various regions around the world before. And this weekend here in Victoria, I got a chance to taste Trillium. It's a single cask bottled exclusively for whiskey lovers in Ontario. I'm flying home by way of Toronto. Maybe they'll have one at the airport's duty-free shop. Never hurts to check. And you should check for Highland Park's single casks whenever you're in a whiskey shop, too. Once again, it never hurts to check. And you can check out the entire range at highlandparkwhiskey.com. Time now for the WhiskyCast calendar of events. BlackRock in London will host an Aberfeldy Burns Night tasting this Friday night, January 25th. Eau Claire Distillery in Turner Valley, Alberta, has the Miss Mary Campbell Burns Dinner on the 26th. The Coburg Restaurant in Dublin's Conrad Hotel has a Teeling Whiskey Dinner January 31st. Hansa Spirit starts that same day in Hamburg, Germany, and runs through February 2nd. Maker's Mark Distillery has a series of Kentucky-inspired dinners by Chef Newman Miller, each night from February 2nd through the 9th at the distillery in Loretto, Kentucky. Distill America is coming up February 16th in Madison, Wisconsin. The Uppsala Beer and Whiskey Festival is February 22nd and 23rd in Uppsala, Sweden. And the annual Go Whiskey Weekend at Julio's Liquors in Westboro, Massachusetts is the 22nd through the 24th. Right now, we have 191 different events on the searchable calendar at whiskycast.com. If you have a festival, tasting, or any other whiskey-related event coming up, just use the contact form on the website to let us know about it. We'll be glad to add it to the list.
From deep in the north, far beyond the wall, the howl of the frozen wind brings word of something new. A whiskey from the land of always winter, for those who face the oncoming storm and never stop walking. Winter is here. White Walker by Johnny Walker.
White Walker by Johnny Walker. Blended Scotch whiskey, 41.7% alcohol by volume. Imported by Diageo North America, Norwalk, Connecticut. Please drink responsibly.
WhiskyCast In Depth is brought to you by Lagavulin. In our first episode this weekend from Victoria, we reported on the latest development in the British Columbia liquor controversy, which started a year ago this past Friday when provincial liquor inspectors raided the 4 Scotch Malt Whisky Society partner bars in the province, seizing any of the Society's whiskies they could find. All 4 bars obtained those bottles through the 2 privately owned liquor stores in British Columbia that sell them, the Strath here in Victoria and Legacy Liquor Store in Vancouver. And both stores ordered the whiskies through the province's liquor distribution branch as required by law. The problem: current regulations prohibit bars and restaurants, so-called hospitality licensees, from buying at private stores. They can only go through the province's own stores, and if those stores don't stock a product, it can't be sold legally at any restaurant or bar in the province. Last summer, a Blue Ribbon Commission tasked with recommending changes to British Columbia liquor policy made changing that rule one of their top priorities, along with allowing bars and restaurants to buy at wholesale prices. That's right, they pay the same prices you and I would pay, then they pay taxes on the markup. Thursday, Canada's Competition Bureau sent a letter to BC Attorney General David Eby stating that the province's policies are in conflict with Canadian competition laws. Layla Wright is the Bureau's Associate Deputy Commissioner.
When provinces are making these types of policy decisions, there are a lot of different considerations that they have to take into perspective. And our job is to really provide that competition perspective. And so you'd have to ask the province how much influence that gives, how much influence we have. But we're hoping to provide a perspective that is unique and that gives them a little bit more information about how their rules are affecting competition.
3 of the bars have settled their cases with the province: the Grand Hotel in Nanaimo, and Victoria's Little Jumbo and the Union Club. But Eric and Allura Fergie, the owners of Fett's Whiskey Kitchen in Vancouver, are still fighting their case, and they have the most to lose. While the other 3 bars paid small fines and lost at most a few bottles of Scotch Malt Whisky Society whiskies, liquor inspectors seized 242 bottles from Fett's, valued at around $40,000. The Fergies rejected a settlement offer last fall that would have cost them $3,000 in fines and all of that whiskey. And they're taking their case to an enforcement hearing to challenge whether the raid was even legal in the first place. They have remained quiet until now, on the advice of their lawyers, but with the support they received this week from the Competition Bureau, they're now willing to speak more publicly about the case. We talked in a crowded hallway here at the Hotel Grand Pacific in between master classes this weekend. So let's talk about what's happened over the last year since the raid, because the raid came a year ago this week. I don't know who wants to address it first, but what's happened at Fett's since then? What's it been like for you guys the last year?
Well, it's been a very interesting year. We've got a lot of support from the neighborhood, the community, and the industry. We're still working, so to speak, with the government to resolve the issue. And ironically, yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the largest whiskey raid in Canada over 90 years. So, still working on it.
What have you heard in terms of the fate of your whiskeys? We know they're still locked up. We know there's an enforcement hearing coming, I believe, in March. What have you heard?
That's exactly what we've heard. So we're working towards that. So it's now May, so it's been pushed back. We're hopeful that we're going to get it back.
What do you think your chances are?
I think they're pretty good. You have to be positive and hopeful in this world. Think positive things happen.
You guys sort of became international celebrities when this happened, because all the pictures that came out a year ago showed the agents at Fett's in Vancouver.
Yeah, we became world-renowned overnight. We try to stay on the down low for the most part, but the government propped us into the limelight.
The Free the Whiskey campaign, or Free Our Whiskey campaign, that started after these raids indirectly led to the Hicken Report, which was the Blue Ribbon Panel report that recommended changes in the way hospitality licenses get your liquor, and the fact that you can only get them now from the province as opposed to being able to go through the private stores, which was the issue in these raids. We still haven't seen any action on this. What do you think is going on a block or so from here over at the provincial capital?
Well, we're not sure what's going on there, but the Canadian Competition Bureau did write a letter to the AG, David Eby, stating that they believe that the provincial government was infringing on the rights of Canadians, people in British Columbia, people who own businesses such as ourselves, because they were breaching the Competitions Act.
And the fact that the province hasn't taken any action yet, they've blamed this on the desire or the need to implement cannabis regulation through the same agencies that manage liquor as part of the reason for this. Are you buying that?
No, I'm not buying that. The cannabis hasn't been paying any taxes, and us as liquor buyers have been paying taxes for years. So you got to give us equal time. So this actually happened before the cannabis. So it's like deal with the situation like that came first, which was us. Don't put us on the back burner because we've been paying taxes for years.
Take me back to that day when the inspectors came in. You were there, right?
Yep, I was there. It was very surreal. It was something right out of Prohibition. They just came in and they just had their truck and full of empty boxes, and they were just like, "Yeah, we're here to take your whiskey," and there was no discussion, nothing. It was just extremely bizarre.
And that followed a bit of an undercover operation with liquor agents from what I understand, over here on Vancouver Island that came over to your place. while the agents from Vancouver went over to the places here in Victoria because they knew they wouldn't be recognized?
For the covert inspections, the undercover work that they did, it's our understanding that it was all run out of Victoria. So we're collateral damage. There was a complaint made against one of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society partner bars, and as the inspectors investigated the product, who had it, they found us and decided to just go heavy in Vancouver too.
But you guys had the most of it, about $40,000 worth of whiskey, if I remember right.
242 bottles. Yes, that's correct. It's a lot of whiskey.
Do you think you'll ever see it again, Eric?
Yes, I do. We believe that the government breached the charter. We believe the whiskey was seized unlawfully. The government responded to that statement that we gave to them, and they said that the charter does not apply to businesses, and that's complete failure. The charter, a business is treated the same as each and every resident in this country, and if you breach a charter on an individual, do the same thing against a business, you've breached the charter. So they can't come into authorities can't come into anybody's business or home without the proper paperwork and notification. So that's where we stand with that. We believe that'll happen. And we also believe that the government will eventually do the right thing, make it go away. They've got a lot of outs and still look good. And I think with the Competition Bureau statement and letter to David Eby, I think they're going to have to take a look at it.
This $40,000, though, might be the best marketing your bar's ever gotten with all the worldwide attention you've gotten for it, though. In some ways, I hate to put it that way, but you could make that argument.
I can't say anything to that.
Yeah, we did get a lot of press, yes, but we'd still rather have our whiskey.
And also, it's weighed heavy on us too. Like all the work we're doing and the time it's taken to fight the fight. So, yeah, you can say that it was good marketing, but it's taken a big chunk of our lives.
We didn't plan that marketing, and I did not have gray hair back then.
How's it feel to be the Bonnie and Clyde of the British Columbia whiskey business?
Exhilarating.
Well, we actually received a letter from, speaking of Bonnie and Clyde, from the Attorney General while we were in Chicago. We're sitting in Al Capone's booth at the Green Mile. Sitting in Al Capone's booth, having a cocktail when we received the email from David Eby. We went, oh, this is good. At least he acknowledged us.
What did he say in that email? We didn't hear about this.
Yeah, he stated that the government believes in our vision for the whiskey industry. Well, it's up to him now. We're not sure how much he believes in it.
But the big thing, too, is the product that we purchased did go through the government. It went through the liquor board. We purchased it from Legacy Liquor Store. It's a private liquor store, but it's government regulated. So that's where the misconception all over the place is, oh, they did it, they got it from another province, or they went directly to the source. No, we did not. We paid the taxes. Legacy pays taxes, we pay taxes, and when you come and sit in our bar, you pay tax. So the government got triple taxed. So that's the big thing that I want to let out there. It's like we did not do anything shady.
No, just the only thing is that provincial policy, because the Attorney General could change this with the stroke of a pen, from what I understand, it wouldn't have to go through the Assembly, requires that hospitality licensees like you buy your liquor directly from the liquor distribution branch that the province runs, and says you can't buy it from private liquor stores. The problem is that rule was put into place, if I remember correctly, before private liquor stores even existed, and was sort of forgotten about when they legalized private liquor stores. Is that your understanding on this?
I concur with that. It's a policy, and as you said, with a stroke of the pen, it can be changed. As a matter of fact, the Attorney General does not have to do it. It can be done with the General Manager of Liquor Control and Licensing. You know, the government likes to say it's a law, but laws need to be changed through legislation. A policy can be changed with, as you said, a stroke of a pen.
And all it takes is that stroke of a pen to essentially wipe out this enforcement action against you, right?
Yep, that's correct.
You going to be glad when this is all over?
I will be very glad when it's all over. And we have our whiskey back.
Yeah, we've got to get it back.
Also, David Eby did say that he's concerned about the union jobs. He did say that just recently. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, you're concerned about the unions? Well, you have to be concerned about all the people in this province, not just the unions. We're running a business, so our business matters just as much as a union business.
And let's emphasize that the union he's referring to is the one that represents the liquor distribution branch workers, those at the private stores. But I'm going to play devil's advocate against his argument here, because even if they open up the law and allow you guys to get your liquor from private liquor stores, those liquor stores still have to get all their stock through the liquor distribution branch, which means the jobs aren't really going to change all that much, right?
That's correct. Right now, the government liquor stores are really, I don't know how to say it. They just there's so many products that we can't get, so they're just. I think it would help them run their business more efficiently if they let the private liquor stores deal with the smaller batch stuff. It just makes more sense. The big box stuff, we're still going to go get our vodka and beers and stuff from the government liquor stores, but specialty items that we can't get there, we should have the choice to get them where we know they are. So that's the choice that we are being denied, and that's just simply wrong.
And you're also paying full retail price too.
Yeah. So and to add to what Allura just said, we shop at 6 to 12 different government liquor stores just to acquire the products we need to operate our business. And sadly, a lot of those products, most of those products are available at one place. And it's the specialty items. The government system is not set up to manage and support small business looking for specialty items. They're a big box store, and we go and get the main brands. And so we got to shop elsewhere.
And if they don't choose to make it available in the stores that the province runs, you can't legally sell it.
Nope, that is correct. We had a conversation with some people in a small restaurant in Campbell River, and there are not a lot of liquor stores in Campbell River, a small town on Vancouver Island. Their liquor store keeps dropping products, and they have less and less stuff to sell in their restaurant. One of the biggest issues we have is the liquor board will decide to delist a product. So it's on our menu, it's in our cocktails, we buy it every single week, we go in to get it, and it's not there. So now we're reprinting our menus, redoing recipes, retraining staff. We're doing a Dalmore whiskey flight for the past month. Had printed material in the menu for it, et cetera, et cetera. We went to pick up the Dalmore cigar malt, find out it's delisted. Called the importer, and they went, what? They went and checked. It had been delisted that day. No notice to them whatsoever. So it's a very difficult system. It's hard to work at, hard to run a business.
Once again, we have asked the Office of British Columbia Attorney General David Eby to make someone available for an interview several times over the past year, and repeated that request once again this week after the Competition Bureau weighed in. The ministry has declined to make anyone available for an interview, but shared a prepared statement that the recommendations in the Hicken report are still being considered, and that an outside consultant will be reviewing the province's wholesale liquor distribution system this year. Any changes would also require what the statement refers to as, quote, additional engagement with public health experts and labor representatives. We'll keep following this story as it develops, and that's WhiskyCast in Depth, brought to you by Lagavulin, the legendary Islay single malt. Look for the new House Lannister Lagavulin 9-year-old. It's part of the Game of Thrones single malt Scotch whiskey collection from Diageo and HBO. Look for it at a whiskey shop near you, and while you're at it, check out the rest of the Lagavulin single malts at malts.com. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Heaven Hill Distillery. I finally had a chance to taste some of the new Glenallachie single malts here in Victoria this weekend. Glenallachie's cask strength 10-year-old is already on its second batch, after the first batch sold out faster than expected. Batch 2 is bottled at 54.8% ABV, and the nose has notes of honey, butterscotch, toasted coconut, apricots, and dried fruits. The taste, thick, oily, and peppery with notes of clove, black pepper, and a touch of cinnamon, balanced out nicely by honey and butterscotch. The finish is long and dry with lingering spices, and I'm scoring the Glenallachie 10-year-old cask strength batch number 2 a 92. Billy Walker and his partners also got a bunch of older casks as part of their deal for the distillery, and there could be a 30-year-old Glenallachie coming in the near future. But for right now, the 25-year-old is the oldest Glenallachie available. It's matured in a combination of American oak, Pedro Jimenez, and Oloroso sherry casks, and it's bottled at 48% ABV. The nose has notes of toffee, caramel candies, butterscotch, muted spices, and a soft oakiness. The taste is syrupy thick with a touch of peach nectar at first, that's followed by a good burst of baking spices with butterscotch and caramel sweetness in the background. The finish, smooth and gentle with a good balance of fruity sweetness and lingering hints of spice. It's excellent, and I'm scoring the Glenallachie 25-year-old single malt a 95. I'll have more tasting notes in just a minute, but first, our tasting notes are brought to you by Heaven Hill Distillery. 85 years ago, as the end of Prohibition meant a renewed demand for Kentucky bourbons, Ed Shapira and his brothers invested in a brand new distillery in Bardstown. They bought their partners out later on, and today, that little startup is the largest family-owned and operated distillery. Get the entire history at heavenhilldistillery.com. Think wisely, drink wisely. For all of the criticisms of government-managed liquor systems, every once in a while, they get something a bit out of the ordinary. Bruichladdich Port Charlotte MC01 2009 Islay Single Malt is officially a travel retail exclusive. But for some reason, someone screwed up and a few cases wound up at the British Columbia Liquor Distribution Branch, which promptly made them available to the province's consumers. It's a combination of whiskeys matured for 6 years, separately in French oak and ex-bourbon casks, then blended and put into Sicilian Marsala wine casks for 2 more years, and bottled at 56.1% ABV. The nose has a nice maltiness. You'll find notes of plums, raisins, barley sugar, fresh berries, and a subtle peatiness. The taste is spicy with a gentle peatiness for a Port Charlotte, as cinnamon candies, clove, and nutmeg dominate the palate, with barley sugar and raspberry jam in the background. The finish lingers nicely with a kiss of smoke that closes this dram out nicely. I'm scoring the Bruichladdich Port Charlotte MC01 2009 Single Malt a 93. And let's wrap it up with the Deanston 14-year-old Spanish oak finish that's officially a distillery exclusive. It's bottled at 57.9% ABV. The nose has notes of candied fruit slices, Christmas cake, orange marmalade, and just a hint of toffee. The taste is fruity and thick with good underlying spices, touches of Christmas cake, allspice, and ginger root, and just a hint of toffee that comes out as those spices start to fade. The finish is long with subtle spices, dried fruit, and a touch of toasted bread with jam. It's a nice one. I'm scoring the Deanston 14-year-old Spanish oak finish a 93. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Heaven Hill Distillery. I'll be adding these tasting notes to our searchable list of more than 2,400 different whiskeys from all over the world. You'll find it at WhiskyCast.com.
Redbreast fans have always cherished our whiskey's sherry notes, so we set out to embellish that character. Introducing the Redbreast Listowel edition, a quintessential single pot still Irish whiskey finished in first fill Oloroso sherry casks from Spain's prestigious Bodegas Listowel. Carrying Redbreast's trademark pot still spices and dark dried fruit notes, the Listowel edition is graced with an enduring sherry finish that would be better described as a final act. Discover the newest branch on the Redbreast family tree.
Let's open up the inbox now for your voice. It's brought to you by Lot 40. First off, here's a comment in last week's episode from Louise McGuane of Ireland's Chapelgate Whisky Company. At the time, we were discussing Brexit and Europe.
Look, you guys had it bad over there, but it's not much better over here. France is on fire as well. So, and we have this whole Brexit piece happening. So in terms of selling alcohol right now, internationally, a lot of the key markets that I deal with certainly are dicey at best.
Well, Louise's comment brought this comment from Eve Cosentino in London on Twitter. Hi, Mark. I believe Chapelgate Whiskey's Ms. McGuane's assertion that, quote, France is on fire at the moment should be taken with a pinch of salt. Traveling there weekly and frequenting bars and stores, I can assure you it is open for business and functioning. Thanks, Eve. And in our first episode this weekend from Victoria, we heard from Waterford Distillery's Mark Rainier on his research into the impact of terroir in whiskey. David Mara responded from Ireland with a 3-tweet comment. Listened to the interview with Mark Rainier from Waterford Whiskey. Really supports my previous assertion of how important wine knowledge is for connoisseurs of, well, basically anything. It was a great listen, and I'm looking forward to visiting the distillery soon. There is no question that terroir exists. Sure, it can be blended away or covered up by other flavors, etc., but, as Mark said, it's there for anyone who cares to look. I think Waterford Whiskey has a unique opportunity to create the Krug Grand Cuvée Mark Rainier was talking about, and then supplement that offering with a series of single farm releases a la Premier Cru and Grand Cru Burgundy and Barolo from Italy. David, thanks for the comments. And I tweeted out earlier today that if you have never come to the Victoria Whisky Festival, you're missing out on a great time. Brandy at BrandZ77 lives right here in Victoria and responded with this tweet. I always forget, and by the time I try and get a ticket, it's sold out. I gave her all of the details on when tickets should go on sale for next year's festival, sometime in November, including how to book hotel and ticket packages through the Hotel Grand Pacific. And she responded with this. My boyfriend works at Grand Pacific, and he told me after the fact, LOL. At least he came home with the new Canadian whiskey book. Well, Brandy, I'd say that he owes you more than just a copy of Davin de Kergamo's excellent book. But hey, it's a start. If you have something you'd like to share with whiskey lovers all over the world, you can always get in touch with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at WhiskyCast. The email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Your Voice is presented by Lot 40, Canada's award-winning 100% pot still rye whiskey. Lot 40, unapologetically Canadian. Please drink responsibly. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and other stuff that make whiskey unique. It's brought to you by Writer's Tears. This time around, we have a question to answer. Mendy Berkowitz of New York emailed us this week. Hey, Mark. Hope all is well. My 10-year-old asked me over the weekend why some alcohol has proof on the label and where it comes from. I'll admit to not having listened to every episode in the past, so if you covered this before, I'll go find it. If not, I thought it might be a good thing to add to the list. Thanks, Mendy. Well, the concept of proof comes from the old method of testing the alcoholic strength of whiskeys, rums, and other spirits by pouring some onto a bit of gunpowder and then trying to light the whole thing on fire. If the alcoholic strength was above 50%, the mixture would ignite, and that would be proof of its strength. Of course, we have much more scientific ways of testing the alcoholic strength of a spirit today, and labels always refer to ABV. That's the percentage of alcohol by volume in a spirit. But in the United States, the regulations also allow that level to be expressed in degrees of proof alongside the ABV level. In the U.S., proof is defined as twice the ABV. So a whiskey bottled at 50% ABV would be 100 proof. Now, the British used to use a different method of calculating proof up until around 1980, and in fact, that's the standard that was used with the old gunpowder method. Under that method, 100 proof was equivalent to 57.15% alcohol by volume. Here's one example of that is still being used today. Glenfarclas 105 single malt Scotch is bottled at 60% ABV, which was 105 proof under the old British standard. Mindy, I hope this explains it for your son, and thanks again for sending in your question. If you have something you'd like us to look at on Behind the Label, just use the contact form at whiskeycast.com to get in touch with us. Behind the Label is brought to you by Writer's Tears.
Writer's Tears Copperpot, a unique triple distilled premium Irish whiskey, combining single malt and single pot still. First fashioned in the 1700s and still a rarity today. Sure, as we say in Ireland, what's rare is wonderful. Writer's Tears Copperpot.
That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. Thanks again to the organizers of the Victoria Whisky Festival and all of the volunteers for their support once again this year in producing our special episodes from Victoria. And thanks to the staff and management of the Hotel Grand Pacific as well. You'll find a link for the festival's website to get details on next year's event in our show notes at whiskeycast.com, along with links for the other stories in this episode. WhiskyCast.com is also where you'll find links for the WhiskyCast Tasting Panel podcast and our WhiskyCast HD videos, along with the latest whiskey news, tasting notes, events, photos, and a whole lot more, including a complete archive of past episodes. Please tell your whiskey-loving friends about WhiskyCast and how to find it in the podcast app on their smartphone. Remember, friends help friends discover podcasts. We'd love to hear from you. You'll find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast. And the email address is comments@whiskeycast.com.
From far beyond the wall comes a whiskey for those who face the oncoming storm and never stop walking. Winter is here. White Walker by Johnny Walker.
White Walker by Johnny Walker. Blended Scotch whiskey, 41.7% alcohol by volume. Imported by Diageo North America, Norwalk, Connecticut. Please drink responsibly.
WhiskyCast. Brought to you by Redbreast, the definitive single pot still Irish whiskey. Those in the know Redbreast.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2019, and comes to you most of the time from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. But this time around, I'm at the Victoria Whisky Festival in Victoria, British Columbia. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.